Welcome to CXQA Live, the show where we talk about the value of agents. We talk about how agents with the right training, tools, and connection with your company are going to be a revenue growth and protection center for your business or brand. They're going to be the best diagnostic tool you could possibly have for your business. They're going to ensure that your customers are satisfied and connected. They're going to produce more and better work, and they're going to want to stick around and contribute to the long-term success of your company. Now, today on the show, we have joining us for not at all the first time, 20-year plus veteran of customer experience and marketing practice, keynote speaker, CX journalist, author, host of the award-winning Doing CX Right podcast, and the only other person other than Jacob and I to host this show, Stacy Sherman. Welcome back, Stacy.
Thank you. What a warm welcome. I appreciate that.
So good.
Well, looks like we lost Rob. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're good. I thought I was going to have to host again and be the guest.
Well, that would have been fine. You could have asked questions to yourself, and I'm sure everything would have gone swimmingly.
Good, you're back.
So now that we're back on track, let's crank on, shall we? I'm really excited about today's topic because it's something that I can really identify with, having relatively recently sort of gotten behind the CX curtain, if you will, starting to see CX as a practice and as a theory, and being in a position to experience things as a customer for a whole adult life, and then you transition into that sort of a role. It does change the way that you see things. And so I'm really excited to talk about this with you, essentially the ways that we can both observe and learn about customer experience when we ourselves are the customer. So, Stacy, start us off with this. What is it like for you being a customer with such extensive CX chops?
It's a blessing and a curse. It's a paradox because I cannot go anywhere without seeing experiences and hearing them. And my kids, my family love it. And they're also, I guess, they're they're used to hearing everywhere we go where it's just meant to be a dinner. It's just meant to be a cup of coffee. But I'm noticing and pointing out what people, brands are doing right and not right everywhere we go. So it's a blessing because there's so much opportunity. I also say it's a blessing because I'm so in tune to it everywhere I go that I also recognize that we have to own our own experience as well.
Mm.
Don't just wait for the brand to do it right. It's two-way street.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I know being engaged with brands as we all are, or even just small businesses as we all are, when you see a really, really, really well executed customer experience that you know is intentional, boy, does it jump off the page. It just, you sense it, you see it, because you know how intentional it has to be for some of these things to actually happen as consistently as they do sometimes. And of course, there's the other side of the coin too, where things that really shouldn't be so hard to make right are just not even close. So I'd like to maybe take this a little bit deeper here, because there's a big difference, I think, between simply having a customer experience and being in a learning mode for customer experience when you are the customer. So maybe you can break down that difference in perspective and tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you, and how you're able to be somewhat intentional with it.
Well, they really blend because as a customer, I am trying really hard not to be critical and analytical the way that my customer experience professional side is always doing in evaluating what great looks like and what needs improvement and the lessons constantly. So I think that's a key is being able to be a customer and see it from the way other customers who are not in the CX space would probably feel it and see it seamlessly, hopefully,
Mm.
versus being as the professional that real evaluation of everywhere I go and every experience I have. And also, as a content creator, it provides really good learning experiences to be able to pay forward to people. I think that also it blends because we also have to put ourselves in the customer's shoes as the professional. So there really is a blend of both hats that we wear.
It makes sense. I think we often miss out on things in life and in business when we see it as an either or. So, kind of having a both and mindset when you're going into a customer engagement where you can sort of try to be a reasonable, decent human, even though things are breaking down in front of you. And you say, well, if we'd only seen these differences, but at the same time, you kind of want to enjoy your day too, right? And it's just humans on the other end. So, kind of a both and from your perspective, it sounds like. Uh,
Absolutely.
so pushing forward with this idea, when we who are in CX enter into situations as a customer, what is the best mindset in your view for us to have?
So I love this question. I actually wrote an article in Psychology Today with Dr. Grant Brenner on this topic, on how we have to own our experience. So that includes when we're talking to customer service agents, we need to be patient and understand that they are the messenger. So there's
Mhm,
patience and empathy
mhm,
involved. There's also, like I said before, knowing that we have to own our experience. And so when frustration happens and humans make mistakes, how do we react to those situations? We can choose to be really angry and irate and ruin our day, or we can step back, trying to understand what happened from the brand side and from the human in front of us, and be able to control our emotions, but also explain to them, not shield them from
mm.
how it's making us feel, but actually have an empathetic dialogue. So there's a two-way communication that's gets to uh, the the learning for the win-win on both sides.
No, that's really good. I think that communication component with the humans involved is really, really critical. It can also be really telling as well, of the brand's intention. And I would say that communication can be two ways. I can think of one story. I don't know, you have a couple stories you wanna share too, but I can think of one story where, I had ordered pizza for the family, and the time just kept going by and the delivery guy didn't show up, but I kept getting a phone call from the guy who was trying to manage the pizza shop. I got 3 calls. Now, it was an hour and 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes that I waited for this pizza. But when that guy who was the manager showed up at my door with the pizza, I'd already spoken to him 3 times. He had taken the initiative and let me know that they were having issues with their ordering system. They did have the order, but they were going to be backed up, communicated all these times. So my kids were saying, well, we're hungry, dad, all this stuff. But when this guy showed up at my door, I just told him, I said, this would have been exasperating if not for your effort to communicate personally. And you went the extra mile. And I really appreciated that. And that helped him with his day, obviously. But there was two-way communication about the whole experience, right? And I think that dynamic can really shift things. And unfortunately, a lot of consumers don't communicate until they're absolutely fed up and done and putting nasty things on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a great example. In fact, having worked in the elevator industry and even Verizon, where there's technicians and mechanics that come out to you, the customer wants an expected time of arrival. And even if they're running late, the communication, even in a pizza example. So I think that's table stakes now, but not
Mhm.
everybody does that.
Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes bigger brands have a reputation for not caring. And so when you see within a bigger brand an individual who is really representing that brand well, for me, that stands out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of take this to a little bit of a different tone, because sometimes stuff is just bad. Sometimes the customer experience is just really bad. Sometimes it's really the result of difficult circumstances. It's nobody's fault. Something like the weather. Sometimes a company policy causes friction for a customer. Having been on both sides, right? You know that these difficult situations are hard for the agents or employees to handle. So I'd love for you to share some wisdom that you've gleaned from being on the customer side of those examples that can be put into practice, within the CX world.
I think there's so many answers to this, but one that stands out is the communication and the opportunity that each of us has to give feedback, solicited and unsolicited, if it's meant to be productive and delivered right. And what I mean by that is I just went to LinkedIn Learning and created my course. And it was it was a dreamy experience. The point of this story is that when it was all done, I actually gave people there, from the producer, the videographer, the makeup and hair lady, I gave feedback to say that this went really well and thank you for this. And they're like, "Oh, didn't even think about it." And so I used my experience to help educate what they were doing right. And then I also shared, I want to give you a tip that I think would make it even better for your next author coming in. And so we each have an opportunity to do that and learn, but it's how it's delivered. And you don't have to be a CX professional to be able to do that. Same thing with mentorship, mentee, mentors. I mean, we're all experienced in different ways, academically and non. So that's my thing, is we all have a chance to articulate what we're going through, what went well. Feedback's a gift and everybody does want it. Again, how it's delivered matters.
Mm, so true. Well, there's also opportunities, I think, through the connections that you can build for everybody to come away with improvement and growth and a better experience. And I think, as CX professionals, knowing that there's a human on the other side of this thing, we have an opportunity to build a connection with that human, right? You talk about, providing feedback. Sometimes humans aren't used to feedback because, a lot of times in our society, direct talk is not really the norm. But to think about the opportunity, as an employee, to grow or to receive feedback from a customer and be able to provide that to your company about a process or a policy or something that could improve the ultimate business outcomes, there's a lot of power in that.
There is. And so it leads me to another example that I want to highlight. And that is when we are talking to a customer service agent, it's very easy to take our frustration out on them.
Hmm.
And we have an opportunity to be patient and be empathetic while get our problem solved. So often I hear people on the phone, and I'm included. I'm guilty over years, where I get on the phone and I'm just so mad at the brand. And so I'm talking to the agent and I'm taking it out on them. And that just, you can't do that. We cannot do that. They're human. So I just want to say that that's another way of owning our experience.
Hmm. So true. So true. And it's an opportunity too, right? If the agent or the employee recognizes that the situation is a frustrating customer situation, your ability to keep control of your emotions and yet articulate how you're feeling and articulate what's wrong with the situation from the customer perspective, oftentimes as a customer will earn you a different kind of conversation with the agent or employee, because the agent or employee doesn't have to protect him or herself from you emotionally, right? If you're an agent or an employee and you've got a customer that's on the warpath, it's very difficult to manage that conversation and to achieve the kind of resolution that is really ideal for everybody. And I think there's lessons on both sides of that.
Yes, and that's where also leadership comes in. Because if leaders are not empowering their staff,
Mm.
if they're not training them well, if they're not helping to reduce the friction, the confidence challenges that they have, the customer feels it, they respond in non-productive ways, and of course, we know they leave.
Yes, especially in a contact center, we know that agents who don't feel like the feedback that they're able to provide on the business and on the customer experience to their leaders, if they feel like that's a dead end road and there's not a desire for that feedback to be presented, that negatively impacts the longevity of that agent's time, because it really becomes an unsafe environment, right? Um,
Yeah.
and, and also, we all want to do good work. I don't think any of us start a new job and just say, I want to see how poorly I can perform and not get fired, right? We all want to make a difference and have some value and meaning in our work. And so the ability to see improvement happen through our feedback as an employee really matters. And this is why we start every episode with our mantra, right? The uh, agent-centric contact center philosophy, because these are components that I think almost everybody would agree with in theory, but it becomes difficult at times to make sure that that's actually what's happening in practice, especially when you're dealing with a large scale operation and you have policies that have to really build everything. But I'm guessing as we're kind of thinking about this, that there's a lot of thoughts about experiences that all of us have had. Uh, Maybe you could give us an example of an amazing customer experience, Stacy, that you've had that really just left you on the positive side and dreaming about good CX in general.
Oh, there's so many are doing it CX right. I'll share one that's a retail um, location experience versus online. And that is a favorite store of mine, Trader Joe's. And I talk about
Mhm.
them a lot. And one example, there's so many, so I'll try to pick a different one. Uh, One that stands out that costs a company no money. It doesn't need sophisticated technology. It's just about empowering your workforce. And so, my example of many different visits is one in particular. I did my shopping, I got to the register, and it started to downpour,
Mm.
rain, rain. And so the person at the cash register said, "Hey, look, I have an umbrella." I said, "Oh, wonderful. Okay, yeah, that would be great. Except," and as I was saying except, she said, I'm going to walk you to your car. Because I'm thinking, like, well, I'm going to go to the car, get you the umbrella back, and then I'm going to get wet again. Like, what? How does that work?
Right.
And so she saw me thinking and said, I'm going to walk you to your car and with your bags. And I was like, you are? And so it was so heartfelt,
Mhm.
and I would have paid a lot more money for my groceries just to not get drenched and not have to think so hard about that moment. So it's something that just stood out to me that I sit here and tell you about now. And obviously, the positivity travels.
Well, it does. It does. And, as you're working within the CX profession and you're thinking about small ways that you can deliver that kind of experience that is connective and that provides additional value and, presses people's thought process into positivity about their relationship with the brand. I think that's what this can do. This mindset of being open to these experiences and then uh, kind of applying them or allowing them to inspire us to dream kind of can work that way. Now, Mark Brody, thanks for the question, Mark. Glad to have you along as always. Ask the question: do you think what a brand is willing to invest in their agents that manifests itself in their CX investment? So how do we see that investment in their agents show up in CX?
Well, if companies are actually measuring the customer satisfaction, their renewals of their contracts, which
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in relationship surveys and uh, phone conversations with customers way before contracts are due. I mean, you'll get that feedback, the importance of how the brand made them feel and when they needed to get help in that part of the customer journey. Just ask your customer. And so you know that the agent is having a direct impact. And you ask questions about it, and then you could fix those pain points. So the metrics tell the quantitative and the qualitative feedback.
Well, and I think you've really made a good point here, which is if we're not measuring the things that will show us the story or show us the impact to the customer's experience and the components that, as Mark's chiming in as I'm talking, are actionable, right? Stuff that you can actually say, hey, well, when we did this for our agents, it changed the customer outcomes. We can see the correlation at least. And you can't always point to causation in metrics versus investments, but in the big picture, when you see multiple correlative changes between investments in agents or employees and customer experience metrics, that becomes something that you can act on. You can build a business case after seeing some of these bigger picture shifts that are paralleled, right? And I think that it's difficult to get started sometimes because it's hard to say, well, if we just spent an extra 4% on agents and improving their experience, then we would see a 12% improvement in CSAT score and a 4% increase in revenue year over year. That's a little bit more granular than what really happens. But to be able to zoom out and see those metrics and how they do relate gives you a chance to build a business case in general.
Yeah, I want to add on from the hats I learned. So recently, the BPO side, where business outsourcing. So your big enterprise accounts have their their agents who serve as an extension of their brand. And it's really impactful or detrimental when those agents leave because now they have to start again with someone retraining their systems, their way of experience. So that also is huge and a measurement because if you have to constantly go through the attrition, you know there's a problem here. So I wanted to bring that up too because your client in the BPO side will leave your brand, will leave your BPO if you are not keeping and retaining your agents. At the same time, when I've been in a company in the brand side, the same thing, if the agents don't stay, there's such a big cost to retraining. So, on both angles, the numbers do tell a story that you're doing it right.
100%. Susie, thanks for your comment and really glad you've joined us today. And she makes a comment about an insurance brand that she worked with who did 20 hours of training on CX theory, on learning actually what customer experience is as a practice and a theory. And the dynamic there was that was probably something relatively new to agents who are normally just measured on interactions and those kinds of metrics, but haven't necessarily been given that deeper understanding of the customer journey and the ways that they are a part of that customer journey. And she says that they were able to see measurable operational metrics for those who did training. And honestly, I love that because I think there are a couple of connecting points here. First of all, it helped those agents, I'm sure, to get a deeper why, right? You get a deeper why and a deeper sense of meaning for your work. But more importantly, it gives you more intelligence to use as an agent in an interaction other than just follow the script, other than just check the boxes of what I've been told I'm supposed to do, so that when there's opportunities for improvising or when something that's a little bit off the normal beaten path is what's best for the customer, the agent who's received CX training or that kind of investment is better able to position themselves through the lens of the customer and do what's best for both the brand and the customer. So I really like that. And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about kind of the connecting point with those of us that have some CX theory and practice when we go into, the customer experience as a customer. How many agents and employees are we talking to and dealing with who haven't had that and who don't even have CX training and perspective? They've just been given a narrow job to do with some tasks.
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to leadership. It goes back to giving them the right tools. And I want to highlight it also comes down to community.
Mm,
The peer-to-peer education and support is also equally important. It's not just from your headquarters staff.
mm.
So that also is meaningful because your peers are able to give you feedback. Your peers are able to answer questions when you get stuck too. And so the company providing that is essential.
Yeah, absolutely. Community and bigger, deeper training opportunities for a career mindset and all that, all very, very, very important tools. And if you're watching this live or recorded and you're interested in some resources for either CX community or CX training for agents, just send me a message. I'm connected with some resources on both of those, and I'm sure Stacy is connected with a bunch of things like that as well. So just hit us up. We have some connecting points for you on that. Now we're almost out of time. So I
Can I ask, I wanted to just
jump in,
preface one thing you just said,
jump in.
um, without planning this, but I also have a LinkedIn course coming out early 2024. So when you talked about training,
Mm,
um, follow me, you'll see it coming out, and it really talks to this, the how to. You already know the why, so the how to, but
mm.
proceed.
Congrats on the LinkedIn course too, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I definitely want to kind of give you a minute to close us out with kind of your summary, right?
Yeah.
Your takeaway viewpoint on this topic, because we've talked about quite a few things. We got a bit granular on a couple of them, but leave us with sort of the mindset, the overview that you'd like us to have, Stacy, as we take this topic out into the world.
Yes, a couple things. One, the world is your classroom. There is so much every day, everywhere you go, to see experiences and companies and individuals doing CX right. Make note of those, apply those. The
Mm,
same with reverse. You'll see and experience companies doing it not right, and therefore notice them. Use your senses, your eyes, listen, and also with your heart on what could be better that you could take back to your organization to do right. I think that's number one, really, really important. Also, be mindful that what's in your control and what's not in your control. Don't waste your energy on what's not in your control. And you have to be mindful both as you are a customer and experiencing, as well as a professional leading an organization, managing teams, being an individual contributor. Be mindful of what you can control and be aware that there are politics and processes that will make no sense, but you live in those realms. And so focus your energy on what you can control because there's a lot.
that's really good stuff. Well, we are out of time for today. We are going to continue our discussion at the discussion table, which you will find in the lobby as soon as I push the session end button here in a second. Thanks for joining us today. Stacy, thank you for joining us and leading us in this conversation. And I think that there's a really good summary to say that the world is your classroom. I like that. I will quote you on that. So,
Sounds good.
all right, guys, everybody go make the world a better place wherever you are today. See you soon.